So after 14 years, 8 months, and 17 days as a nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons soldier in the United States Army, I'm a poet. My name is Clayton Shackelford, and here's my story. Do the GBRS.
Hello, welcome back to the After That Now What podcast. I'm here with Clayton Shackelford.
Yeah.
Knew him back at Fort Bliss, Texas. He was N.B.C, now named Seaburn, where everybody else still in. Well, welcome.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here, and a great honor that we could reconnect after all these years. I know before we sat down to do this, we were talking, and it was like it's been almost 9 years since we've actually seen each other.
Yeah.
It's cool that we've maintained contact through social media, which is an awesome thing in that regard. But yeah, it's been too long, brother.
Oh, it's always too long, and I feel like I'm gonna have this conversation with like everybody of like, we need to let it not be so long going forward. And I hope to. I mean, I hope to, make it a regular travel around kind of deal, and at least link up with people when I can. But yeah, so let's hear the story of Clayton.
Sure. So, a typical American story, honestly. Grew up, was born in Germany. My dad was military, he was Army. So was born in Germany. We kind of moved around a little bit, Alabama, back to Germany, back to Kansas, where both my parents are from. And my dad got out of the Army in 1979.
Wow.
So
what did your dad do?
He was a commo.
Oh, okay.
He was commo. And so we kind of moved around up and down the central Kansas corridor for the next 11 years. And then in 1990, and I know I'm dating myself here. Believe me, I feel it every morning when I roll out of bed. I had an opportunity to come down to College of the Ozarks, just out here by Branson, Missouri. And went to college there, and met the girl that would become my wife, and did the college thing. I was studying history. The plan at the time was to probably either work in a museum or go and teach history somewhere.
Okay.
So graduated, then did grad school, and then in the middle of that, we had our first kid, and there were things going on that I was noticing within academia, and I was really starting to get kind of burnt out on some of it. And unfortunately, and I had to make a decision, and at that time it was, I needed to provide for my family, and that was the call I made at the time. So started just doing odd jobs, security, clerical work, that sort of thing. And then 9/11 happened.
Oh, okay.
And at that time too, college loans were kind of breathing down my neck a bit. And at the time they were offering college loan repayment. And, was there a sense of patriotism, post 9/11? Admittedly so, because I'd watched Desert Storm from my college dorm, and kind of figured, well, I've missed out on the great grand adventure of my generation. Hindsight's 2020, So I had a friend of mine that he was kind of looking at the military too, and we went in together, and but then he decided not to sign on the dotted line, whereas I was like, well, yeah, this is the right thing to do. And so by that point, we'd had our second child, and literally right after MEPS, I found out that we were expecting our third. So, in retrospect, that was really the good decision. Went to Fort Leonard Wood for basic, got hurt in reception. Freak accident. Got hurt in reception.
Oh no.
So the day that I actually ended up starting basic training was the day that I was supposed to have graduated
Okay.
AIT.
Oh.
So I was at Fort Leonard Wood for 10 months.
What do you do without? I mean, what are you doing?
I was in from essentially when I got there, which was the end of January of 2002. I was and got hurt literally that first morning. You know, like I said, freak accident. They put me over into the physical rehabilitation and training platoon. So it was, you know, I know this is not PC, but it was the platoon was broken into two sections. You had your fat camp people, and then you had your broken people. And the broken people were they were anywhere from people like me who had just shown up to people that were literally like 2 weeks from graduating AIT. And we were sort of in a modified form of red phase. There were people there that, based upon their profiles, the only physical activity that they could do was walk or blink, you know, breathe at their own pace kind of thing. But it was an interesting place to be because, and again, I turned 30 when I was in PTRP. So I was the oldest person in that platoon. And I think even some of the drill sergeants were younger than me. And so, but I learned a lot. And so I would start at night, you know, before lights out, start talking with people and find out what the different experiences were across the board. So when time came, when loaded up in the cattle car and buried my face in my duffel bag, I knew I had an idea of what to expect. Obviously, you know, knowledge of something versus living through it is two different things. And so yeah, that. And then I ended up getting hurt in basic, but I didn't know it. I had a pelvic stress fracture. I was a big boy when I went in, and I'd lost a lot of weight prior, and or during that time in PTRP. But even then, I was just pushing myself probably far beyond what I was really needing to do, and so I got hurt. But so yeah. Fortunately, I had a really great command team who knew what had happened to me earlier, and they kept me going, training, everything. And so, cool. So then first duty station was Germany. That's what I had requested on my contract. Like I said, I was N.B.C 54 Bravo for your old timers out there. And then
was Vilsack over in Germany?
No, I was actually at Schweinfurt, which is no longer, there's no military that I'm aware of there at Schweinfurt anymore. And so I was in the Big Red One, I was in 1st Brigade, I was in a combat engineer unit, and went in to be the N.B.C specialist, ChemOps specialist for the headquarters and headquarters battalion, or headquarters company. And they had just gotten back from a rotation in Bosnia when I got there. And so it was a lot of learning. And it was nice to be back in Germany. And then especially after my family got over there, and, you know, we did a little bit of exploring, not much initially, because there was still just a lot of learning. And
was it similar there? Is like, did you have a 2-year?
It was a 3-year.
3-year.
Yeah. It was a 3-year for a company tour. It was 3 years. And you know, did Grafenwehr, did Hohenfels, and then we came up on the patch chart for going to Iraq. And so we deployed February 11th of 2004. And spent some time in Kuwait, and then we rolled over the berm. Oh, it was it was like around the 1st of March is when we
Okay.
rolled over the berm, and we ended up at Fob Remagen up on the south side of Tikrit.
Okay.
And did that for the next year. Did a lot of driving. I again, was a talk monkey for the company level talk, but since I was the driver for the first sergeant's truck, and it was a gun truck, I ended up going out on a lot of log packs, and then a few times got tasked over to the battalion commander's PSD as a driver, because they would have a vehicle go down and they needed a gun truck, and so they would tap our vehicle for it. And then, especially after I got a Warlock Red, which was that early form of IED jammer.
Oh, okay.
I ended up going on a lot of convoys then.
Yeah.
Got back, did another basically year in Germany. Was coming up on the end of my contract. Was looking to re-enlist at the time. I was wanting to stay in Germany. Well, my family and I, we were wanting to stay in Germany. We really enjoyed it, and I was going through all the hoops the Big A wanted me to try to jump through, and had letters of acceptance, letters of release to go to an aviation unit at Ansbach. And then Big A came back and said, no, your MOS is over strength. Never mind that, again, had the letters of release, had the letters of acceptance. They needed me. They wanted me.
Yeah.
So I was looking at, literally, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to re-enlist, and so I re-enlisted. And at the time, I went in like it was a Friday, and they said, hey, we've got these 3 posts for you. And went in back on Monday and said, okay, all right, I'm going to pick this one. And they said, oh, no, all of those are gone. The only thing we can offer you is Fort Irwin, California. I knew everybody knew what Fort Irwin was, NTC, and I was like, well, okay, all right, because at the time, the idea is that you never judge the Army by your first unit, right?
Yep.
So we ended up out at Fort Irwin, California. And the next 4 years was really an interesting time. Ended up getting assigned to the protocol office. And of course, this was at the time, early GWAT years, the whole, we were talking about it earlier, the counterinsurgency operations. And this is when NTC was shifting from force on force to, the coin and building the villages and having the role players out there and everything. And it was a really great time to be out there. So what I ended up getting was assigned to an office where we dealt with all of the visiting VIPs. So it was, every rotation, we would usually have the Force Com 4-star and this command sergeant major come out and visit the rotating units. We'd have, some assistant Force Com commander, come out, some 3-star. We had foreign dignitaries come out. One of the first protocol missions I drove on was we had the defense minister from a couple of different defense ministers from a couple of different African nations out there. So we had civilian groups come out, and we'd take them out into the box so they could observe training. I was doing trips to Las Vegas to pick people up from the airports. If air assets weren't available, we'd take them by ground. So Las Vegas, LA, San Diego. I mean, it was, and the interesting thing too is, Fort Irwin sits at the end of what I call the world's longest cul-de-sac. It's 45 miles, something like that, from Barstow. And it's very remote, but it's a really tight-knit, or it was at that time, a really tight-knit community, because there were a lot of people that we ended up knowing from Germany that for some odd reason their paths took them to Fort Irwin too. And so you started looking at, you were either in the middle of nowhere or you were in the middle of everything.
Oh,
okay. I mean, Vegas was 3.5 hours away. LA, a couple hours away.
Yeah.
Took the kids to Disneyland.
Oh, yeah.
Took the kids to go see, the Hollywood sign. Just different. Take them down to the beach and that sort of thing. So life was busy, because we worked around the rotational units, and so we were 14 days on, and then we'd have a 4-day, or we'd have some admin time, then we'd have a 4-day, so we guaranteed 1 4-day a month. But there was one week where we were doing visits every day, and I ended up working like 90 hours in 5 days. I mean, it was a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. And there's, people will go like, well, that's nothing when you're out in the road, out in the box, you're going and going and going. But it was a really interesting time to be out there. Was originally supposed to go to Korea. There was some family issues, high risk pregnancy type thing, and got those orders deleted, stabilized. But then, came down for the thing of, well, you're going to have to go somewhere, right? And at that time, Fort Bliss was the only availability. So went to Fort Bliss. Interestingly enough, there's interesting things with my family history. My grandfather, who was a World War II veteran, landed at Normandy, got wounded, went back to William Beaumont Hospital to recover before he was shipped back over to Germany as part of the Army of Occupation for a time. My dad, after he came back from Vietnam, was sent TDY to Schweinfurt, Germany. This would have been like early part of 1970.
Okay.
When he was there. And then, then I ended up there at Schweinfurt. Well, my dad did his basic training at Fort Bliss. And so then, here we had a third generation, ending up at Fort Bliss again. And so
Fort Bliss is just kind of like that. It's a magnet.
I remember kind of joking with a lot of folks, because at the time didn't really know what was going to happen. I was originally slated to go to 2nd Brigade, which was the testing brigade at that time. First Armored. And but then the day before I was supposed to ship out, I get a phone call from the in-processing NCO at reception there, and he says, hey, you're being diverted. And I was like, oh. He's like, and I kind of had a sneaking suspicion because the commanding general at Bliss had been the commanding general at Irwin prior. And so I had a feeling I was going to get pulled up into division or the headquarters there. So I ended up doing protocol at Fort Bliss as well for a couple of years. And for those asking the question, no, protocol is not an MOS in the Army. And I think it should have been. I know the Air Force and the Navy have it kind of. But for me, it was a round peg, round hole kind of situation. I really loved doing that work. And because we did, over the time that I did protocol, I did 3 different presidential visits.
Nice.
Just a lot of fun, a lot of high stress, a lot of high visibility kind of things where stuff had to be right. And there was times we made mistakes, but it was one of the most unique experiences I've ever had. Never would have expected it in the Army at all. But anyway, did protocol for a couple of years there at Fort Bliss. And then came down on orders for, PCS orders to 6-1 Cav. And that's where I ended up my career. And, was by that point, Seaburn NCO. When I first got there with 6-1 Cav, you guys were getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan, and you were force capped. And so I ended up on Rear D, another experience I'd never had, really. And that was an eye-opening experience, especially for
The people we left there with you.
that was an interesting
If you're
time.
not taking them to deployment, there's something really wrong.
Yeah, they're either they're broken physically, they're getting ready to get out, or other problems. We'll just put it that way. And yeah, got some stories there. We had the one soldier that seemed to always have a new phone every week and a different car every 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And then one day I come in and the rear detachment commander and first sergeant major, however, the NCOIC kind of pulled me into their office and said, yeah, he was picked up. He was transporting illegals across the border. And it was like, well, at least the paperwork's out of our hands now. We don't have to worry about the paperwork. But now what I did while you guys were out there and I was on Rear D, I got tagged to be the family readiness liaison. So I was coordinating information between like division and post and brigade that was coming down for the family readiness groups. So I was talking with a lot of the spouses and coordinating if there was issues that the family readiness groups themselves, they needed a little bit of more, either not really a direction, but they needed access to certain programs and things like that. I was the POC for that. So that was that. And again, another thing, you never really expect something like that to happen, but that's what I did. And it was a lot of fun. But then, you guys came back, went on leave, started the whole reintegration, rear detachment gets stood down, and I ended up in Alpha Troop. And those were interesting times. A lot of time staring at New Mexico sunsets out in the field and eating a lot of dust and
spent a lot of time in the field. Lots of time. And so many times staring at the lights of Fort Bliss, too. Like, you're not that far away from your room or your home.
And then if we were not staring at the lights of Fort Bliss, off in the distance, we were staring at the lights of like Alamogordo, New Mexico, or we're watching the fireworks from the ranges on the west side over there by
the Donna Ranges.
The Donna Ranges. That was wild. So anyway, because of a series of just, it's really sad when you define your career by injuries that you get, and nothing is. Mine were not combat related injuries, and it was just training injuries, whether it was ankles or knees or pelvises, it just strange things that you're not looking for, you're not wanting to do, because nobody really wants to be down, right? So, but also because I was older coming in and it became one of those things where the injuries started catching up, and I ended up injuring my knee when we were out at NTC as a rotation in 2015, and went the whole route of trying to figure out what can we do to fix this. The PA that we had at the time, really great guy, can't remember his name at the moment, but he was really looking out for me too, and at that time, so this was late 2015, that's when the Army was going through sequestration, the budgetary crunches during the those Obama years. And that's when they set up there on post a whole building just for med boards and stuff like that, and people that they were getting out. And he really recommended, hey, this is probably the better route for you. And so after 14 years, 8 months, and 17 days, I hung up that hat and started to I was looking forward to reintegrating into civilian life, but
sorry, you did med board though.
Yeah, I was med boarded out, and medically separated, and not medically retired, but I was medically separated.
Okay.
So the the pension helped, and it helps to this day.
Yep.
If I would have been in for a little over 3 months at that point, they would have had to medically retire me. And but that's something that I've worked through, and I'm not bitter about it. It is what it is. We can't change it. So but tried to kind of stay at first in the El Paso area. Was putting out resumes like mad. Wanted to work on post as a civilian. But nothing was, again, budget cuts.
I remember
and it was
that
everywhere.
time.
So ended up moving to Arizona, and hunted for work there. Was even working with a veterans assistance guy in the state job office, and it was about 7 months before I finally got. And the hard part too, and this was walking into places cold. This was.
I want to say thank you to our first and only sponsor currently, veteranpeptide.com. Are you ready to feel like your best self again? Whether you're battling nagging injuries, trying to shed a few pounds, build lean muscle, or just want younger, healthier looking skin, Veteran Peptide is here for you. We're not just another supplement company, we're veteran owned and operated, and we know what it means to serve with integrity, discipline, and results you can trust. That's why we're committed to providing pharmaceutical grade peptides at unbeatable prices, because high performance shouldn't come with a high price tag. From recovery to rejuvenation, our peptides are designed to help you take control of your health, optimize your performance, and feel confident in your body again. Every product we offer is backed by science, crafted with care, shipped with the mission first mindset that defines who we are. And here's something we're especially proud of. A portion of every purchase goes directly to veteran nonprofits, so when you shop with us, you're not just investing in yourself, you're giving back to those who've served. Join the thousands who trust Veteran Peptide for quality, affordability, and results that speak for themselves. Because when you feel great, you perform great. Visit veteranpeptide.com today and take the first step toward the best version of you.
Putting in applications on the Air Force Base there in Tucson, Davis-Monthan. I was either overqualified or it just was really a weird time to be hunting for work. And this was 2017. But then I finally got my foot in the door at the airport, the Tucson International Airport, as a custodian. And a few months later, I was a shift supervisor, and then a little over a year later, I was the senior supervisor for the custodial department.
Nice.
And it was a challenge coming from a military background, even though I'd had the civilian background. The civilian world had changed enough, and there were a lot of times where you just wanted to kind of like take somebody to the back 40, the tree line, and do a little wall-to-wall counseling, and you couldn't do that. So you had to be a little more creative. Well, then COVID hits. And it really impacted the airline industry. And it was also a time of great innovation with certain things. I mean, we were testing new stuff all the time, new cleaning materials and stuff like that. So it was a really interesting time. But then my father passed away, and my mother needed help, and so I became a full-time caretaker. Quit my job. Realized the at that time the pull of family became deeper, and so quit my job and became a full-time caretaker for my mother. So that may have been a long-winded answer to your question, but our lives become journeys.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, the journey, and everybody takes different. You know, there's not one other N.B.C/Seaburn guy out there that took your path. There's not one that did the same thing while you're in or getting out. I mean, everybody has their own path, and making, the bases that you get stationed at, making the best out of it. You said the best thing talking about Irwin. I've never heard anybody say anything cool about Irwin. Besides, you're in the middle of, you make it what you want it. And if you want to be in the middle of nowhere, you're going to be in the middle of nowhere. If you want to be in the middle of everything and realize it, then you're going to be in the middle of everything.
Right.
So that's awesome. And I think that, dealing with, and that guy that you talk about that got in trouble with trafficking, I remember that, and I remember hearing about it. And I don't know if anybody's gonna watch this, that I've told that story too, but hey, it's real. I don't make this stuff up. It happens. And I've told so many people that story of like, it happens, and you got to watch for the signs of like, this is weird that this guy's driving a new car every few weeks, and new phones and anything like that. But
and they were always out of money. And the signs were there, but sometimes you try to really give the people the benefit of the doubt. And you're as an NCO, we're trying to take care of our soldiers. Even if we don't know the entire story, and it's kind of fun now watching TV shows where some of the military themed TV shows, some of them are pretty good, especially with the idea of how people watch out for each other. But good grief, some of the stories that we could tell as soldiers and NCOs, the Army is and the military in general is like any other institution. You have your good apples and you have your bad apples.
Absolutely.
I have served beside and served with and served under and led some of the best people I could ever want to know in my lifetime. Conversely, I have also encountered some of the worst people I have ever met in my lifetime.
Absolutely. And I think, if you keep your eyes open, you can really tell who they are after a while. That's also what's nice about the military is you're representing our whole country / civilization. Really, we get people from around the world that join. And you get everybody's personalities, their backgrounds, and everything, and you can start to pick up on different things that you never would if you didn't have that exposure to the different people across the country that get together. And it's always, that's always my thing. If you ever, like, I joke about, if you really want to lose weight, join the Army. But, if you do, the other thing is if you want that experience of people, if you're like, obsessed with anthropology and stuff, like knowing
sociology, psychology, it all gets wrapped up into it. Absolutely,
for sure. And all the extra stuff that you deal with, not so many super hardcore deployments these days, but all of that going into it and what happens after. It's amazing to see the success stories of getting out of combat and getting back in the civilian world, and knowing that it doesn't work for everybody, and knowing that you can kind of see the signs with your friends when it's not working. And I think that's my little plug for Men's Mental Health Awareness Month is definitely check on people, and sometimes the people that smile the hardest are not smiling inside. For sure.
And that is so critically important. And in the military, we're taught not to look at ourselves, but to look at others and to help others. And we pour ourselves out into others, and then we fill ourselves up with a lot of times the wrong things. That's kind of what led me into writing poetry. Something that I never really had kind of, I'd done writing, and I blogged, I did things. I'm sure you remember some of the history lectures that I would do there in the
Yep.
in the cough as we were or out in the field, sitting around and oh yeah, well this reminds me of and go on a 5-minute lecture about some historical event, tying it into what we were experiencing. But um, no, I was at a really low point in my life here, a little over 3 years ago, and not that I was looking at checking out, but there was just a lot of emptiness. I was staring into the void, and it was staring right back at me. And um, at the time, I was talking with some people, and algorithms are a funny thing on social media, and I got plugged in with some poets that are not necessarily published or anything, but they were just sharing their stuff on Instagram, and I was like, "Oh wow, they're speaking to me." And then about a month or two later, there was a thing. It was National Poetry Writing Month, and the challenge was to write a piece of poetry every day for 30 days. And I was like, I've never written poetry other than roses are red, violets are blue kind of things. And I was like, I want to try this. And 30 days became 60 days, became 6 months, became a year. And now 3+ years later, I still write a piece of poetry every day. Now, if I know that I'm having something that's for like really super early the next day, I'll write the night before in order to post and publish. But yeah.
That's awesome.
And and I've had people ask me, "Are you writing about you?" And I'm like, "No. Everything that you read is not about me." I take that back. I did write one poem called "The Veteran," but and I used a picture from myself from my deployment. But I've used what I've gone through to definitely inform my writing. But my poetry is not necessarily about me. I want to make it so that anybody can read it and come away and say, I can recognize that. I've experienced that myself, even in some small part. So
well, it's definitely working. your goal there has hit. I mean, I hope everybody can check out his page and really see what we're talking about here, because I hadn't known you were doing that.
Yeah.
Alex was nice enough to be like, "Oh, you gotta check out Old Man Shaq. Like, he's doing some crazy stuff on Instagram." And I was like, "All right." And then, I read them every day, and so many are like, I'm not just like anything written every day, reading every day. I'm not gonna attach myself to everything. But there are a few that I'm just like, wow, this hits right there. And the variety, and not anything controversial moment, to just read something that's
thanks,
a
brother.
Great part of the day.
Thanks, brother. I one of the things too is there's a lot of people out there, and then social media is that great connector. It can also be that great divider. And we live in politically charged times, and so many people have ended relationships over political beliefs one way or another. And my experience has been, I feel like we have more in common as humans, at least I would hope so, than differences. And because of that, I really made an early choice that I didn't want to do zeitgeist poems. And not that I have opinions one way or another about stuff. I do, but honestly, it seems like everybody wants to vomit their opinion one way or another on social media, and that is their right to do so. I fought for that right. But I would much rather try to edify and bring people a moment of beauty, because there's a lot of beauty in the world.
Absolutely.
And we sometimes forget to pause and kind of reflect. I don't know if the microphones will pick up, but this entire time we've been sitting here, we've been hearing the birds and the breeze, and the world is crazy enough without us having to inject our own little craziness into it. And
Absolutely.
But yeah, I don't see myself quitting. And then again, never saw myself as I'll use the title, poet. But it's something that I'm growing into, and definitely seeing that. Yeah. I probably am becoming one.
That's really awesome. So, I already have you as one. So, so going back, went through the story. Yeah. We have, I got 3 little checkpoints on what would you say to yourself as advice before getting in the military. There's people out there watching. I had somebody comment that said that they're looking to enlist here soon. Like, what would you give advice from your experience?
Get yourself physically prepared as much as you can ahead of time without breaking yourself down. That is a key thing. I mean, being in the military is a physical job. Now, we can have debates all the live long day on if a person who maxes their PT test is the best kind of leader. But that said, it is a very physically demanding job, and you need to have your ability to do so. Sorry, train's coming through. But that and keep an open mind.
Yep, keeping an open mind for sure, because like you'll hear so much scuttlebutt with even people who've been in for a week. They'll tell you, "Oh, this is how it goes," and it's like, no, I mean they don't know, and you don't know, and I don't know. I was in for 8 years, you're in for 14. We still don't know. It's your own experience, and you're gonna really take it with what you have. That's it. Really. So, anyways, then fast forward to getting ready to get out. Med board's a little different, but same type of process. You had to do
Soldier for Life or whatever the name of the program was at the time. And I went through that, and again, I still when I was putting together my resume, I was using that one that we developed during that Soldier for Life program as a thing, and I really thought that I was going to have a really decent chance. For anybody that's getting out and then looking for work now, again, I would even argue how much the world has changed from 2017 to now. Some of the things that I saw when I was working there at the airport and we were hiring people there, so much of that process now is so automated. You literally, if you have a job that you're wanting to go for, you have to take the job description and literally rewrite your entire resume so that the AI scanning it will look and see those exact words. And
keyword searches is what I was looking for.
And and then I know, for example, during that time when I applied for over 100 positions there in that Tucson area. Then, and again, that was everywhere. Raytheon, all these other places, and I actually had an opportunity to sit down with one of the HR members from Raytheon, and they were like, I showed them a copy of my stuff, and I said, these are some of the jobs that I had applied for, more than qualified for. And they were like, yeah, but here's the deal. Sometimes we only look at the first 20 applicants, and you might be applicant 21, and you might be more qualified than the previous 20 applicants. But because we cut off at 20, it's just too bad, so sad. So
I wonder if they're still doing that, because that's pretty wild.
I would imagine. I would imagine that probably across the board, it's pretty much that way everywhere.
Wow.
So it's the other thing though, that an advantage that we have coming out of the military, obviously besides GI Bill and the other incentives that can kind of, you can recreate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of us develop, even though going into the military, you already have sort of that innate thing of not wanting to give up.
Mm-hmm.
The military kind of hones that down.
Yep.
Makes it a little stronger. And, so that was the big thing for me, was just, well, okay, all right, I'll go to bed tonight. I'll get up tomorrow and I'll try again.
Yep.
Yep. So.
Yeah. I mean, resiliency training. That's what definitely. I always joked about
that
it.
Was a curse word for me.
Yeah.
For a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just, I joked with somebody online a couple weeks ago. It was like, when is the world going to stop training me for resiliency?
Yeah. Sergeant Williams, if you're seeing this from El Paso, I remember you and I talking about resiliency many a times there at Fort Bliss in the cough.
Yeah, it's definitely but we learn. There's people out there that don't know how to deal with it and have much harder time. But so then you gotta go on anything from life. Is there any final advice or anything for anybody sitting out there that
dude,
old man Shaq's got a lot of wisdom. I know it's tough to pull.
Gratefulness. I know that sounds a bit cliche, but there is a truth into it. Even if all you can literally be grateful for is the fact that you can go to the bathroom by yourself. Everybody's grateful for something. You just got to find your something. And even if it's one thing, that's, and believe me, no matter how bad you think you've got it, and I know when we're in the deep dark depths of it, we are feeling pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me, somebody's got it worse.
Absolutely,
somebody's got it worse. And that's not to make light of your situation at all. It's like, it's just a reality. And there's always, and I guarantee you, those people that are feeling worse than you, they might have actually something that they're grateful for too. And so we just got to find that one thing, and anchor into it, brother.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate it. Let's get
a
hug.
Yeah. All right.
It's good.
Good to see you, man.
It's good. Great seeing you.
Appreciate the opportunity to sit down and do this.
Absolutely. So. Of course. And anybody else out there that wants to get on, I'm no weirdo. We're good. That's a good one.